Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to see you as always. I'm Demi Mohammed, the program assistant at the Fair Gallery of Art, and we thank you for joining us today for our art-based meditation session brought to you by the National Museum of Asian Art. Today's meditation will be led by Aparna with a spotlight talk by Emma Stein, who is our assistant curator of South Asian and Southeast Asian art. Today, we'll focus on a vessel from the northeast of Thailand that is dated from 300 BCE to 200 CE. And as always, I'll be placing links for more information about the artwork and the museum. Please feel free to use the chat to express any questions or thoughts that you have, and we'll address them after the meditation. Again, we thank you for joining us, and I'll pass it to Emma to get us started.
Okay, thank you, Demi. Hi, everyone. It's great to see you and welcome. We're going to be looking today at a beautiful vessel from northeastern Thailand. So as we begin, just let your eyes begin to focus on this spiral motif that wends its way across the surface of this pot. The pot itself, to give you a sense of its physicality, is about 1 foot high, and it's a nice, weighty earthenware vessel that stands on a pedestal foot. And you'll notice that the spiral begins here at the center in a single line and then kind of branches out like multiple roads leading in a circle across the surface. So this is actually one of the earliest works from Southeast Asia to survive, and it's one of the earliest works in our collection. To put this in perspective, this vessel was made about 2,500 years ago, and most of the artwork from Southeast Asia comes from a little more than 1,000 years ago is the beginning of it, okay, and much more recently. It was found buried in a grave site in northeastern Thailand. And the grave sites in this area provide important information about a culture that today is lost, that no longer survives. This must have been a very sophisticated aesthetic culture with a great care and concern for objects. The vessels like these were buried over the bodies of the deceased. And the spiral is a really important motif that is found particularly from this period between about 300 BC and 200 CE. The culture that this comes from is known as Ban Chiang, and it's named after the first village in northeastern Thailand where pots like this were discovered. There's a kind of convention among archaeologists to name an entire cultural area by the first site in which a ware like this was found. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the site at the time had any kind of political or cultural primacy in the area. So today, Ban Chiang culture refers to basically a loose network of about 100 sites that all produce similar types of objects. The spiral was kind of a hallmark motif of this cultural area. Okay. And as I mentioned, it's found particularly in this period of time between about 300 BC and 200 CE. And it's found most notably on the ceramics, but it's also found on jewelry that was found buried in similar graves. And we can imagine that there also would have been textiles that would have had similar patterns. So again, this was a culture that prioritized motifs, designs, artworks that had some kind of function. The vessels themselves seem to have been ceremonial, being buried with the dead in the early period, in the earliest pots to survive. They're found near the feet of the person buried. And then a little bit later on, they were deliberately broken and the shards were dispersed across the bodies of the deceased. In the later period, they were again laid intact, but not only near the feet, also near the heads and over the body itself as full vessels. So you'll notice this one has a lot of cracks in it, but it was probably not deliberately cracked and then buried. It was probably buried intact and got broken, along the way. Our Department of Conservation and Scientific Research has done extensive work on the pots from Banshan culture that are in our collection. And look at the way that they've so patiently put the shards back together, right? As part of their research, they've looked under a microscope at the composition of the clay and found that in this vessel, 2 different types of clay were used. And the clay was found locally in the area. So potters all over the world, it's a kind of practice to use the clay, use the earth in their locality. But within this clay, there's even bits of broken pots that had already been fired. You'll also notice that on the surface of this particular pot, there are some darkened areas, right? And this happened during firing. The paint was applied before firing, and then the composition of the clay sometimes included plant matter that would burn during the process of firing. So this darkened area is carbon that's actually from smoke. I find this spiral pattern to just be mesmerizing. And it must have had some sort of significance for the culture. And I'm sure that everybody here can think of multiple examples of jewelry from any area, from different places in the world, in which a spiral is an important motif. So I'll invite you to kind of contemplate those comparisons. It's such an important symbol in nature, right? And such an important sign. So I'd like to let Aparna lead us in a meditation with that as our point of departure.
Thank you so much, Emma, for taking us on this journey. In fact, as you mentioned, the time period of this beautiful work of pottery, it just reminded me how, when this was happening in Thailand, yoga philosophy was developing in the Indian subcontinent, and how the spiral motif has come to be, it has become this almost like a sacred symbol or kind of sacred geometry when we think of, Fibonacci sequence and, the golden ratio and all of that. And in fact, that is going to be the inspiration of our practice today. So the spiral motifs and the golden ratio is what we're going to try to build up through our breathing practice. And if you think about spirals, they're kind of everywhere across the cosmic scale, whether it's the DNA in our cells, whether it's the curve of a nautilus shell, whether it's the arrangement of the petals of a pine cone, or the center of a sunflower. It is also there in the shape of our galaxy. So it seems like, nature loves this motif, and it is so philosophical that we would use this on pottery and jewelry and textiles. So our practice today will be a breath-centric practice. And to do this, I'd like to invite you all to sit comfortably. Sit in a way that your spine could be tall, and you could relax your shoulders. Just take a moment to maybe close your eyes and notice how you feel in the chest and the upper back, the spaces directly involved in our breathing. And if you feel the need to prop your back with the pillow, you can do so. Also make sure that you move a little bit on your chair or couch so the feet can touch something, the floor or something under the feet. If you feel inspired to move your shoulders or upper back in any way that will help to relax them more, do all of those movements. And slowly, at your own pace, arrive into a stillness that allows our attention and energies to be focused on what we would like it to be focused on. And one of the ways we can do that is by placing our awareness to the body. So, as I mentioned, a part of the body, simply bring your attention there and try to relax that body part. Let that body part take up space. Bring your awareness to your feet and let your feet relax. Now bring your awareness to the lower legs. Lower legs, relax. The knees, thighs, and the seat. Knees, thighs, and the seat, relax. And gently shift your attention to the hips. Hips, relax. The abdomen and the lower back. The chest and the upper back. The shoulders. All these spaces, relax. Upper arms, elbows, forearms, wrists and the hands, relax. The neck, the face and the head, the neck and the head, relax. Now the entire body, relax. Let the body relax as if it's spreading out to wherever it is supported, say in the feet, the seat, the back. And let's balance that quality of groundedness with a sense of ease as we lengthen the spine, broaden the chest. So even though there's that quality of groundedness, it feels like we're floating in a sea of gravity. Let's begin to deepen the breath. Softly engage your throat as if you want to whisper. And with that, let's breathe in and out. And if you notice that there's some sort of tension here in the jawline, as you breathe in through your nose. But as you breathe out, drop the jaw, maybe making a ha sound, like the jaw has significantly relaxed. Let's make our hands like palms facing forward. And this L shape between your thumb to the index finger, let that frame your ribs. Now, as you breathe in, let your breath expand as the ribs expand center to sides. And as you breathe out, let the ribs soften as if knitting towards the center and the spine. Again, breathing in, let the ribs expand into your palms. And as you breathe out, drawing the ribs in as if knitting them towards the spine. So let's practice this awareness to the breathing for the next 10 breaths. Relax your palms to knees or thighs. Just for a few moments, check in, noticing how you feel in the body. If there's any shift in your bodily sensations, any shifts in your emotions or thoughts. And if there is none, we'll just observe that. When that is complete, let's continue to free the breath so we'll eventually be able to expand it at will. Now we'll practice alternate nostril breathing to free up any congestion that might be in the nasal passages. You could make the peace sign with your dominant hand. Press the peace fingertips to the space between your eyebrows. Using right hand, it's the thumb with which you cover the right side of the nose or block that nostril. Inhale through your left. Then close your left nostril, breathe out through the right. Breathe in through the right. Close and breathe out through the left. So we're inhaling through one, exhaling through the opposite, inhaling through that opposite, exhaling through the first nostril. If one nostril is blocked, inhale through your open nostril, exhale through the one that feels congested. And whenever both nasal passages open up, you can come back to alternate nostril breathing. So let's do this for about a minute. Let go of all the efforts to the breathing. Letting the breath happen on its own. Can we check in with the mind body? And from this place of being a lot more centered, maybe gently open our eyes. And we'll bring our awareness, our visual awareness, to focus on this one spiral. And we could bring in a little more imagination here. So as you trace this spiral shape, notice how it's being formed when this dot here starts off, and instead of going back to where it started, it expands and becomes like a bigger circle. And then somewhere along the way, instead of completing that circle and going back to the spot, it's expanding. So the spiral is representing a constant expansion. Almost like that expansion is in a certain measure. So now we'll try to bring that same expansion in our breath. We'll start with a kind of a circular breathing, keeping the inhales and exhales equal. And then eventually we will expand each inhale so it starts to resemble a spiral in our breathing pattern. So if you're ready, deep breath in. You can count your inhale and try to exhale for the same count. Inhale, 2, 3, 1. Exhale, 2, 3, 1. Or any other counting pattern that your breath can accommodate. And then you've been able to measure out the maximum expansion in your breath that's possible without having to strain or hold the breath. We'll start experiencing the spiral in our breath. So start with the shortest duration of your inhale, like say a count of 1. Then exhale to a count of like 1.5 times. Now inhale for that 1.5 times. Exhale for something like 3. Inhale to a count of 3. Exhale to a count that is 1.5 times of 3, like 4.5. If this is too much, you can start with a count of 1. Make that exhale 2. Inhale for 2. Exhale to a count of 4, and so on and so forth. So let's try this for about a minute. When you reach the end of one spiral in your breath, start another spiral. And when that is complete, relax. For a moment, let's suspend all the efforts to our breathing. Can we check in for any shifts in the mind body? And then we'll go back to our spiral breathing, but this time we'll start from the expansive breath to the more and more progressively shortening breath, as if we're tracing from the outside of the spiral, the outer rings, to the inside. Notice how, in this reverse process, your inhales start more expansive and the exhales become more shortened. And when you will, you can check in with your mind body's response to this choice of breathing. Now we'll come back to gazing at these spirals. And notice how, if you were to trace a spiral from its periphery, has this potential to sort of bring your awareness deep inside, like a whirlpool or a vortex. It's not only drawing us to the center, but also drawing us inwards. So, in that sense, can we spiral our attention to focus on what is within this body? That space that is enclosed by the physical boundaries of this body. Volume within our feet and legs. Volume within the torso, arms, neck, and head. And instead of observing this space as a summation of the parts within, the body parts or organs within, can you just visualize this like a field of consciousness? The energy of life that allows us to sense the microcosm within and the macrocosm outside. Consciousness which allows us to experience the interaction of these two environments. Noticing how this body now has become a vessel, like this earthenware vessel here, for consciousness to not only manifest, but also play, and offering us the opportunity to experience that play like a witness. Notice this play happening in the tiniest aspects of the self, the atoms and the molecules, the DNA within each and every cell. Phenomena happening at the cellular and the tissue level. Each moment unique and separate from the previous one. And yet the ability of our perception to feel like it is all one continuous experience. Like the cracks in this earthenware vessel brought together so we can experience these pieces as one complete whole. Notice all these microscopic phenomena piecing together the experience of the vessel that the body is. Experience of this body as a vessel containing consciousness in the form of life. Breathing in, we're here now, living through this body. Breathing out, we're sharing this embodied presence as collective humanity. Slowly bring your awareness to all the aspects of the body that offer its stability, solidity, like the earth element manifesting through this body. Maybe also take a moment to thank all those forces, visible, invisible, that are supporting our presence and transition from this moment to the next. Maybe close our practice today by joining palms in prayer and bowing to all that which supports, bowing to the light within ourselves, bowing to the light of all the wisdom and teachings of yoga and the teachers through whom we receive them. And finally, may we bow to each other, like we're saying, the light in me honors the light in you. Thank you so much for choosing to share your presence, time, practice, and attention with me today. I hope this practice of mindfulness, this practice of breathing through like a spiral was useful to you. And now let's go back to Demi and Emma so we can share more questions and thoughts on this work of art.
So Emma, we had one question that I believe that you answered in the chat about the group that this was from.
Mm-hmm. So this was, yes, Banqiang culture is the name of the culture. And it refers to, as I mentioned, about 100 places in northeastern Thailand where similar pottery has been found.
Mm-hmm. And then from Deborah, Emma, what was used to make those red lines?
So it's paint. And there's a high iron content in it, which gives it the red pigment. No brushes have been found in the graves, but they probably would have been made of wood, and wood disintegrates. Mm-hmm. So it may have been a kind of stick, or brush was used to paint on. No brush strokes have actually been detected when looking under a microscope. So it may have been a stick that was used made of wood. But really, we don't know specifically. Yeah.
It's cool that we can distinguish how it possibly was painted on.
Absolutely.
And then Aparna, I think you might be the great person to answer this. Someone was asking for more guidance on the breathing, I think.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I just saw that question from Serena. Serena, first of all, thank you for that question. So what we're doing is, let me just try to show it one side. So we're kind of placing our palm like that, like the palm facing forward, with the, facing downward, sorry. And this phalange, or this connection between our index finger and the thumb, is framing the sides of the ribs. So that's what we did when we, and this is a practice that can bring our awareness more to breathing in the ribs, which can be particularly useful if we've been slouching a lot, because we tend to compress our ribs in all these cases. Or for the prenatal practitioner, for example, when, things are moving up and, we want to breathe more into the sides of the chest, this can be a very useful way to expand the breath. So that's the question number one. And also, Serena, you'd asked, can you provide specific count for a spiral-like breathing, in one and breath out two? Absolutely. So you could use that. Or if it's easier, you can also try like breathing up to a count of 4. And then in that same rhythm, you could breathe out to a count of 6. And you can just keep practicing that. So it will be more like a single coil spiral. But if you're able to, go beyond these numbers, and, if you can expand your breath more, you can do that. You can also by shorten, what I meant was you're starting from the outside of the spiral. So you would actually take a big inhale, and then the exhale becomes like shorter than the inhale. Whereas when you're expanding out, it's more like you start with a shorter inhale, expand the exhale. Again, inhale to that same length of this exhale, expand your next exhale. So progressively, you're expanding your exhalations and your breath overall. And both have different effects. In exhales being longer are generally said to be more calming and relaxing. The inhales being longer are more like energizing and awakening. So both have their value.
Circular breathing has always been a nice practice, but I remember I was actually in choir learning this, and we would imagine our finger was a candle, and trying to control our breath, and not to blow out the light all the way. So if that might help someone in a different visualization way.
Absolutely.
What is the count for the breathe in and out? Serena's asking.
The count for the in and out could be 4, 6, if it's easier to start with. Again, the 4, the 4 could be like in, 3, 2, 1, or it could be in, 3, 2, 1. So you have the choice to, pick the rhythm that works the best for you. But the idea is, can we keep it easy and, can we do that without straining ourselves? Like, it could also be the same thing if you were doing like, and then, you can feel the pressure in your face and your chest, but you don't have to do that. We're trying to keep it smooth and easy. So it just flows like that coil of the spirals.
Mm-hmm.
I hope that helps.
And then Sarah, this will be a question for Emma. I think this will be our last question. Is there anything known about the civilization that made the ceramic?
Well, as I mentioned, there's a lot of information lost, right? This was a very long time ago, and what we know about them comes from these burial sites. So we know that they produced exquisite material goods, right? Like jewelry and ceramics. We know that they were sort of agrarian based. It's a rural area still to this day. And there are practices of pottery in the region that are still used by potters today. The pots seem to have been made not on a wheel, but using a paddle and anvil technique, where a ceramic that was fired at a higher temperature, so it was harder, anvil was placed on the inside of the vessel, and a wooden paddle, which was sometimes wrapped in cord, was on the outside. So some of the Banchan culture wares actually have a surface impression that was made by the cord that was wrapped around the paddle. And so it would just be worked using the potter's hand and turned and turned and turned, but not on a wheel. I'd really invite you to come and see our exhibition of Bunchen culture pots, which is on view in the lower gallery of the Sackler now. So if you're in the area, please come and see it. I think you'll find that the vessel that we looked at today is really impressive when you see it physically real, of over a foot. It's about a foot in height. And I remember that the first time that I saw these objects, having only seen pictures of them first in our collection online, I was just really struck by the size and the kind of presence that they have through their shape and also through the spiral.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And on that note, we definitely encourage anyone who's in the area to come visit the museum. Like Emma said, we have our prehistoric spirals exhibition, earthenware from Northeast Thailand, as well as our Encountering the Buddha exhibition, which has been extended. I highly suggest that you check the website for up-to-date hours, as we are operating on a sort of reduced schedule. But we're here, we're open. We'd love to see your faces in person as well. So we thank you all for joining us, and we will see you next week.
Thank you, Emma, thank you so much,
us.
Emma.
Yes.
Thank you, Aparna.
It's always a pleasure and a treat to hear from, Emma's Spotlight Talks and learn so much. Thank you so much for that, Emma. And hope we can have you soon again on yet another artwork and learn from your Spotlight Talks. And we'd like to thank everybody who's here for being a part of this journey today, and hope that you can come back and be with us on Monday when we start yet another week with yet another meditation. Thank you so much. Peace be to all.